There's nothing quite like beating your rivals in football, but to do it in convincing fashion and on their own turf is pure bliss. And that's exactly what Manchester United experienced on Sunday as they crushed Manchester City 4-2 at the Etihad. Ella Toone shone on the day, marking her return from injury with the first hat-trick ever notched in the Manchester derby. In this video, we analyse how the victory came about for Man United, whether we should have seen it coming, and how it sets up the WSL title race for the rest of the season. These are our thoughts from Man City 2, Man United 4. Alright, let's get into some analysis then. Manchester City 2, Manchester United 4. The first Manchester derby that Manchester United have won at Manchester City. Harry, an incredible game of football.
A brilliant match, and as from a neutral point of view, we couldn't have asked for much more. I'm sure if you were a fan of either club, it was either a brilliant game or a really hard game to watch, but overall, really enjoyed watching it. It was a game that just threw everything at us as fans. Expect the unexpected just kept happening, and it was one of those games where you can't look at it as a whole. You have to break it down, and you kind of split it into these sections. We'll go into it in detail, but you had that 35-minute dominance from Man United. Then City came out of nowhere in the last 15 minutes of the first half, and then we had a second half that was very edgy, very cagey, and without that Ella Toone goal 10 seconds in, I think would have been very interesting. It was still entertaining, but it was definitely more reserved for United. They had a job to do, and they got that job done. But what a match. What a way to return to the WSL in 2025. Great game.
Yeah, indeed, a thoroughly enjoyable watch. I haven't had time for this video. We will be analysing every bit of the game. Haven't had time to make any graphics, but have rewatched and analysed the game. So we're going to talk about some observations from the match. We're going to talk about the goals, obviously. We're going to talk about what conclusions we can draw from it and where the season for both sides goes from here. So let's start by talking about the game. Quite an electric start. Manchester United had kick-off. They send the ball forwards. They lose possession. But then we see the first signs of City folding under pressure because the counter pressure of Manchester United. United give the ball away, but they're very quick to spin and they're very quick to go and put the pressure on Manchester City, who will hardly give them possession. And it really should have been 1-0 United after 30 seconds.
Yeah, very much so. I think it caught everyone out, but more importantly, it caught Manchester City out. It was so... City would have expected a very high press from Manchester United, but not 10-20 seconds into the match. And it was incredible, and it's the first time really we've seen this season where a side have done the kick-off tactic where they punt the ball long, and it actually nearly works out. But yeah, that was alarm bells were ringing after 20 seconds for Man City, as you say, and that should have been the only warning they needed. But that really set the tone for how the next 30 minutes took place and what we watched, because it was just City being caught out completely by brilliance from United.
Yeah, and people will look at the game and go, well, City had all of the possession because throughout the match they ended up having 74% possession to United's 26. They had 22 shots to 12, 8 on target to 5, and people will look at those numbers and they'll say, well, City deserved to win here, so what went wrong? But I think you've got to view it differently. You've got to look at it as Manchester United out of possession were phenomenal, especially in that first 35 minutes. City couldn't play through that press, as we saw numerous times, and that's what led to those 3 goals. And then United were clinical with those opportunities. Let's talk about that first goal. United played through the lines very successfully. It was a poor pass out from Keating. Again, though, it's a dual one. And this was the difference. Was once this one wasn't this was just a ball sent forwards, not a pass out from Keating, because they'd stopped going short because they kept losing it. But the difference in this game was United's ability to win duels in every area of the pitch. And this was a ball won in midfield. I think it was Dominic Janssen who heads it down. And then they can play from there. And they play a couple passes. And then it's Turland against Knack. And Knack gets absolutely bullied by Elizabeth Turland. And it was interesting because the first 14 minutes, you could look through and say, well, Knack there had the physical edge over Turland, was very successfully holding her up or jumping in front of her and intercepting that ball. But then here gets bullied by Turland. Turland dragged down with her, though. It runs through and Ella Toone reacts quickest, lifting it over Keating. It's a really good technical finish, really well executed finish. Just to lift it over Keating. Casper on the line tries to get out the goal but can't. And that is how Manchester United opened up the lead. Really good stuff. Ella Toone proving her brilliance once again, and United taking the lead 14 minutes in.
Yeah, it was a really, really good start, and as you say, it was a mixture of Man City making it was, well, at the time when the goal went in, we viewed it as an uncharacteristic error and a poor pass from Keating, and I mean, didn't expect it to happen 3-4 times more. But in that moment, it was a really poor error from City, and United capitalised. And for Toon, it was a much needed goal, and it was a really well taken finish for a player who has had the run of form that she did for the first half of this season. Very easy to make the most simple chances look really difficult, but she's come into this year, and that shot was just, she took everything out of it. Didn't need the power, didn't need the pace on the ball, just a smart little dink over the goalkeeper and let the ball do the rest of the work, and that's exactly what she did, and it ended up in the back of the net. And well, at the 14 minutes in, that was the dream start for United, and it just got better.
Yeah, from there, City just didn't look confident, and the problem was they kept out from the back, and it wasn't working. It was a Manchester United corner, the second goal, and this showed defensively where City's errors lie. The issues lie the fact that there isn't that decisiveness, there isn't that communication. The ball's allowed to drop in the penalty area. It comes off Elizabeth Turland. It falls to Leah Galton, who was offside, admittedly, but she takes the ball, turns around, puts it in the goal, and United lead 2-0.
Yeah, very much so. It is one of those where Galton was offside and it did come off Turland, but before it came off Turland, City allowed it to, I think it rebounded off someone's shoulder, it then hit Virginie, then hit Turland, and then found its way to Galton, who was in an offside position. But how, from a City point of view, has that touched two players, stopped in their penalty area, and then been flicked on by a Manchester United player, and then put into the goal, and no one stopped it? Someone's just got to deal with it. Put a name on it, get a head on it, and get it clear. You can never let the ball land in your penalty area from a corner and expect not to concede.
And then once Galton scored, the reaction for me was really confusing. I didn't understand that. If I was in that position, I was a City defender there, my hand would be raised. It would be a protest for anything in that situation where it looks like there may be something a bit dubious, but City heads drop. And that is a clear mentality problem right there. The fact that rather than protesting and going, hang on, Galton was offside, rather than being observant to that fact, everyone's heads drop. And that, for me, shows a clear problem at Manchester City that extends beyond tactical issues, that extends beyond personnel issues. It's a mentality problem. Once you lose that will to win, that desire to win, it becomes very difficult to motivate players. And at 2-0, it looked like they were going to concede a few more. And ultimately, they probably should have. They turn around at the end of the half. Let's talk about that third goal in the first half. Then when Manchester United went 3-0 up, Ella Toon again. It's really poor playing out from the back from Manchester City. I feel for Keating, because if you see that screen grab, you look at the options she had, there weren't any. United's pressing was phenomenal, and their player-to-player coverage was absolutely excellent. That what they did very successfully was mark up individuals. And so they ended up, because of the way City play, it's a 4-3-3. So they had both their fullbacks would cover a winger each, both the wingers would cover a fullback each. And now this is really important because with Manchester City, both their fullbacks like to bomb forwards. It's how they overload teams by pushing both Kasper and Noah Harvey on. We've spoken this season about how that leaves them vulnerable to transition. And we didn't really see United. United couldn't really do much in this game because City were building up from the back, from deep, rather than having the ball high up the pitch. When they did have the ball high up the pitch, United weren't really looking to break because they were already 3-0 up. And that ultimately fell apart. But what we saw was United really effectively covering those options. Bizet put in an absolute defensive shift, as did Leah Galton. They followed those fullbacks really well. And so what we saw, even when they drifted inside, what we saw was them completely taken out of the game. And that was that player-to-player coverage that meant United could so successfully press City off the ball, work City off the ball, leave them short of options. We saw it in midfield as well, because in there you've got, for Manchester City, you've got Park, you've got Rhodes, you've got Hasegawa. Now, what we saw really interesting, Hinata Miyazawa, who is usually that deeper lying midfielder, was following Hasegawa in the press. And that allowed Ella Toon to push up onto a centre half. And then you had Dominique Janssen in midfield, who was able to, because Park was going wide, and then you can push someone else onto her, or you can let her drift. And then you've got Rord in there as well. Dominique Janssen was doing a good job of keeping the two of them relatively quiet and cutting those passing lanes. Miyazawa was onto Hasegawa, and that made a huge difference. We saw in the Chelsea game, if you take Hasegawa out of that City team, in terms of by marking her out of the game, it's very difficult for City to do anything in possession. And we saw that again in this game. Miyazawa followed Hasegawa around, especially when City were in deep build-up, and that meant it was very easy for United to turn over the ball, win back possession high up the pitch, and turn those into attacking opportunities. Now, this is really relevant for that Toon goal, because what we see is Kiara Keating with a goal kick. Now, in that moment, City should just be able to play out lovely. United have camped them in their half, and it's really interesting to see. Very aggressive pressing from Manchester United. Uahabi drops in to try and receive the ball. She has Turland on her shoulder very quickly, and when Keating plays it to her, Turland reacts quicker. Manages to win the ball back. It falls to Elatoon. Admittedly, again, it looks like she's from an offside position, but she comes back on, gets the ball, puts it in the back of the net. They're not difficult finishes. That one or the Galton goal, not difficult finishes, but they win it because City defensively were incompetent.
Yeah, I think it's, Turland in this game picked up 3 assists simply because she would just be given the ball. The press was so good for United that Turland was always the one that City practically just passed her the ball. Turland gave it to someone else who was in an open space, and they scored. She did it. She technically did it for Galton from the corner, but she did it twice for Toon as well. And then Toon went on and scored a goal. And it was just, yes, City were handing United opportunities by making errors, but those errors were forced superbly by Manchester United. And it was that third goal where we saw that big, shout and that moment of huge celebration from Skinner, because that third goal especially was his homework paying off. And in games like Manchester derbies, the winner, what it takes to win is sometimes you have to set your team up for that one individual game. That's what Skinner did. He built on what United had done all season, but then managed to plan perfectly for this one single game. He did his homework on Man City. He made sure Man United were perfect in every area, and they reaped the rewards from it in the first 35 minutes. And that third goal especially was exactly what he envisioned happening. When he set United up like in the press like he did when they were training with it, that third goal is exactly what he expected and what he dreamt of, and he got that. And that's why he was so happy. It was probably in dreamland, the fact that 3-0 at the Etihad inside 35 minutes. But United, yes, people will say that Keating was poor because she kept passing the ball to United, but as you say, it's that lack of options which was forced by Manchester United. They earned those goals by forcing those errors.
Yeah, I like that analysis there of Skinner's reaction, because I had conflicting thoughts in it. On first, and I called it on commentary, talking about how that's a really important reaction. Seeing that emotion, seeing that passion from Mark Skinner is really important. However, I think reflecting upon it, it showed where United were at as a team in that moment. Mentally, they viewed that moment as, we are 3-0 up now, this game is won. Yeah. That was a celebration of victory rather than yes, we've scored a goal, right now switch on. I think United as a whole switched off in that moment, as Skinner did as well.
Yeah,
we saw that in the last 8 minutes of the half. That Volta, that turning point of Manchester City, almost turning the game around. On 40 minutes, Viviana Miedemar's goal, it was really well worked down the right-hand side. Again, you put Mary Fowler in the right position, she'll create things. And this is what confuses me about Gareth Taylor, is that it's not always that the tactics aren't right, but it's the profiling for me that I find really weird with Taylor, because Mary Fowler did nothing on the left-hand side. And I get that maybe they're trying to replicate what Lauren Hemp does in cutting inside and having a shot, but we've seen so much versatility from Fowler on the right-hand side, the ability to work on that right-hand side. And so I don't understand putting her on the left-hand side. I think on the right-hand side, she looked really good throughout this season. And once they put her there, she went and created an opportunity, which Viviana Miedemar reacted quickest to in the box and put it in the back of the net. I think this one was one where United possibly could have done more. I think the centre-halves, though, were positioned well. It's just Miedemar reacted quicker than Millie Turner did at the back post. Not anything that Valentine's Choice could have done about it. So, yeah, it's an annoying one to concede. I think that you'd hope to stop that ball coming into the box there. I thought Gabrielle George had a good game, but she could have done more there to prevent Fowler putting that into the box. Just got caught out by the dribbling, and it was a good ball. Very good ball in from Mary Fowler. So that opened up the game again. That gave City belief. Then on 45 plus 3 minutes, it was Rebecca Knack's goal. And again, I think it's one that United will look at and say, well, what more could they do? It's a really good ball in from Fowler towards the back post. Knack has 2 players on her, and neither of them are anywhere near her. And it's a looping header to the far corner, which is out of Tallis Joyce's grasp. And yeah, it's a really, really good header, and it shows already where City's threat could come from.
Yeah, very much so. Knack is incredible in the air. We saw that in is it Rosengard?
Rosengard,
scoring double digits for a centre half is absurd, but it's that prowess from corners that can really reward her and her team, and it got City right back into the game. And as you say, it was 2 goals where I don't think United did anything majorly wrong. It was 2 really good pieces of play from City, and especially Mary Fowler, that United would probably just like overall they were caught out because they got a little bit too comfortable. And City took advantage, but it did also take some really good pieces of play from Fowler and from Miedemar. So credit to City, they did. Overall, they didn't deserve to be back in the game, but from those moments of brilliance from that last 8 minutes, they had earned their right to be only 1 goal behind Manchester United. Yeah. And I think it's fair to say that going into half time, they had the momentum. We sat there at half time when talking about the game on stream, that City have the momentum now, and it's been a really good second half because United had the lead, but City, they had the belief that they could go out and they could get something from this match.
Yeah.
That didn't happen, though.
No, it didn't. In the second half, a very quick reaction from Manchester United to what had happened at the end of the first. City trying to play the ball out. The ball goes back to Chiara Keating. I thought this is a really weird one because if that was your intention to go straight back to Keating, why would you not? For one, that pass has got to be better because that puts Keating in trouble. And two, why would Keating not be slightly closer? It felt like that ball was chugging along for a while there. And that meant that Turland and Toon, who were in hot pursuit, were able to get into a position where they could profit from it. And Keating's clearance strikes Elizabeth Turland, and it falls for Toon. And Toon and Keating are chasing onto it. Toon gets there, and it does take a touch off Chiara Keating. Ultimately, though, it goes in the back of the net. Man United 4, Manchester City 2. And I think all the momentum and all the belief that City had built up and potentially carried through that half-time talk, we don't know what Taylor said, but you would hope it would be something to ramp him up. Everything that happened there is gone, and it was deflated. And you could see again that reaction from Manchester City, that drop of head, that frustration. They had to literally pick up Chiara Keating because she was that crestfallen, and that felt very symbolic of where Manchester City are right now.
Yeah,
lost and frustrated and deflated.
It sums up City perfectly that all this momentum they had was shot inside 10 seconds of the second half. That is just. You can't afford to do that. For me, at 3-2, they had a very good chance of getting a point, if not winning the game. But as soon as Toon made that 4-2, United weren't going to make the same mistake again. They weren't going to rest on their laurels. They weren't going to get caught out. And it was one of those where City practically handed it back to Manchester United. Credit to them again. It's brilliant pressure. Turland and Toon, absolutely rapid, straight onto that ball, hungry to go and get another goal. And they did it perfectly, and they didn't make the same mistake twice. United, the best defensive team in the league this season, they'd already let City score 2. They weren't going to. City needed at least another two or three to even get anything out of the game. So United weren't going to let them score 2, and it felt like in that moment, everyone, whether you're a United fan or City fan, everyone knew that game was over for me because nobody saw United conceding 4 goals in one game when they've conceded 3 all season.
Yeah. And the rest of the game followed a very similar pattern of City trying to come forwards, but their attacks being futile. United were valiant defensively.
Yeah. And
I think that was really interesting to watch. And ultimately then the game finished 4-2. I think it's one where I don't want to say, I called it, because I feel that comes across as smug and arrogant. But I think anyone who's analysed a lot of Manchester United this season, watched a lot of Manchester City, would have come to the same conclusion pretty much. Because, potentially not. Football's a very difficult game to analyse and people come to different conclusions. But from what I've seen from United this season, what I've seen from City, I always thought United were going to win this game. And now, obviously, it's difficult to predict the manner in which they'd win or how it would come about. I certainly didn't think that it would come from, Chiara Keating clearing it into Turland's face. But from what we've seen from United this season, every performance has been excellent defensively. They've conceded the least goals in the league for a reason. And City, going into this game, had conceded 8 goals, which is more. And I know that still sounds like not many. But when you consider that United had conceded 3, Arsenal conceded 5, Chelsea conceded 6, it was just a little bit more in those clubs. And now it's up to 12, obviously, because they've conceded 4 against United. But we could see those defensive frailties.
Yeah.
We watched them happen at Everton. Literally, their defence looked open in that game. And I think it's been a long time coming, a result like this. And now City find themselves in a position where they're sort of just in no man's land, because it doesn't look like they're going to be able to push for the title. They're only 2 points up United and Arsenal, but it feels as though that gap is going to grow. It's difficult to say, but we'll see over the next few weeks. But yeah, it feels lost for City. And again, I think we saw in this game what we've seen all season. We saw particularly in the Chelsea game, and I think there are some really interesting parallels with that match, in that Gareth Taylor cannot address issues on the fly. He's not pragmatic. He doesn't react quickly. And we saw it again in this game. His first substitution came in the 77th minute in a game where they were losing 4-2. Now, I know you can make the argument that there's not a lot on that bench, but you can't tell me that Lily Murphy wouldn't have offered more for 30 minutes than Ayoba Fagino did in that game.
Yeah.
And it's not, you don't even have to necessarily say, oh, Fagino's a better player or Murphy is, but 30 minutes there. Give a youngster a go. Give someone opportunity to go and run at that Manchester United defence, because nobody in that City front line was doing anything at that point. They did then make a change. They brought on Blinkilder for Miedemar, which I didn't really understand. It didn't really do anything. Murphy then got 8 minutes at the end, I think, with the added time. So, yeah, I don't really... I thought it was, again, a game where City didn't change enough when issues arose. I thought it was a game where they didn't react to substitutions, and ultimately it's why they fell apart. Their backline made too many mistakes, and City didn't rectify them. But equally, their rest defence and their defensive structure this season, their out of possession structure, hasn't been good enough. And that's not something you can address in one game, but it's something that if you've analysed that first half of the season, you would have done something about over the winter break. And so I don't understand where that shortcoming is coming from Manchester City. Why is that not something they're working on? And why is that not something Taylor's addressing? And I think at this point now, where they're sat fourth in the league outside of the Champions League spots, obviously they're still in the Champions League at the moment. We'll see the draw next Friday, but depending on who they get, that could be very difficult. And they're still obviously in both cup competitions, but they're playing Manchester United tonight at the time of posting, which will be interesting to see how they get through that game. And then in the FA Cup, they've got, who do they play? I can find out quickly. They play Leicester or Stoke, so that should be a winnable game.
Leicester.
But Leicester did beat them. So yeah, it's gonna be interesting. But if they don't come away from this season with silverware or European football, surely the writing's on the wall then for Gareth Taylor.
I think Gareth Taylor's in a lot of trouble. There's a lot more questions than there are answers, and they are now 9 points behind Chelsea. But not only 9 points behind Chelsea, they're 2 teams off Chelsea. So even if Chelsea weren't as far clear as they are this season, would be more of an argument for Arsenal and United to win the league right now over Man City. That is, from a City point of view, that is so poor. Yeah. If they lose to United tonight, I think Taylor's in trouble immediately. I don't think they'll rush to sack. I don't think they'd rush to sack him. They'd probably wait to the end of the season, but I think there'd be an argument if they were sat fourth in the league and knocked out of the Conti Cup in the quarter-final stages. I think he'd be quite lucky to stick out his job, because for City, when you sit in fourth and you're out of one of the cup competitions, if they do lose and you're out of one of the cup competitions, then suddenly there's not much harm in taking a gamble, because if you stick with what you've got, you might not get Champions League, and that opens up more problems, because if you've got players like Lauren Hemp and Khadija Shaw not playing in the Champions League, they're not going to be happy about that. Anyone in that squad. Well,
that's the thing, isn't it? Because Caroline's expected to join this window. That deal seems to be done and is on the verge of an announcement. But her stipulation for joining Manchester City is that they're in the Champions League right now, and that's why she's not going to PSG. And if City were to be knocked out, suddenly your marquee signing isn't in Champions League football next season, and would possibly look at a move away this summer. And so there's lots of issues with City not getting in. They can then struggle to attract players. We've seen the same with United this season. Last summer they really struggled seemingly to attract players. And they still got Dominique Janssen, which is a fantastic signing, but they did struggle somewhat, and Elizabeth Turland. They did struggle somewhat, though, to attract those top players. I think we saw it a little bit with Arsenal a few years ago when they weren't in the Champions League. So, yeah, it's going to be interesting.
It is, because as you say, your Caroline won't be happy. Alexandria will be on the first plane to Barcelona once a season. I think she's there. Yeah, she's gone. She might go now.
I didn't see her in the City United game. That was the guy. That was the whole.
But yeah, I think that obviously City could still end up finishing second, and they could win the FA Cup or the Conti Cup, and suddenly that's a really good turnaround. But you have to. It's not even one of those where you can go they've played, because they are playing badly, but their other problem is that Arsenal still haven't lost under Rene Slagers. Man United have just torn them apart and could yet again beat them in the Conti Cup tonight, and that would be that would be harsh. That would just really drill home what has been a barren run for City. But yeah, and then it's like, okay, but even if City, win the majority of their games remaining, that might not be enough to beat United and Arsenal right now, because they're in scintillating form, and they look unstoppable, especially Man United, because Arsenal big test this Sunday. That is maybe the game that we'll see. If Arsenal get something from Chelsea, then for me, City don't stand a chance of catching them, and Man United look unstoppable at the moment. So it's a really worrying time for Manchester City. They've got to dig deep now. That's all they can do. But as you say, with after Everton, that's when they should have come into 2025 and been playing beautiful, beautiful stuff. After this United result, they have to put a shift in now, because if they don't start to do it, results suddenly start to tumble over, and you end up with you can end up in a really, really bad spot. And for Man United, they've been flawless. They've been brilliant. And credit to everyone who's associated with that football club, because this season, top tier football. And just all round, the recruitment, the tactics, and the form of the players. It's one of those where when it's all come together at once for United, and it is brewing up to be a phenomenal end to the season for them.
Yeah, indeed. I still think there are some issues for United, and that will be something that Skinner looks to address. I think this season they've prioritised the defensive side of the game, with the knowledge that their attack they've got good enough individuals that they will get away with just relying on them going and creating opportunities. But their out of possession stuff this season has been second to none, really. They're the best defensive side in the WSL. It's only this season that they've gone level with Arsenal on goals conceded now. Before now, they'd only shipped 3 goals this season, and I'd be very surprised if they concede more this weekend than Arsenal do. That would mean Arsenal had a fantastic result at Stamford Bridge. So, I think it's going to be... But United are playing so well. I think it's going to be interesting to see how they develop this tactic going forward, because if United are now looking at, and it's something they've never done before, how do they shift from being second or third in the league to taking on Chelsea and trying to win the title? That's now the big question. It's the same question that's going to be posed at Arsenal. It's the same question that's been posed at City for the last 2 years, and City haven't had the answer. Gareth Taylor hasn't had that answer. Now Skinner will have his second chance. Second chance now to see how close he can get to Chelsea, and Slagers has that opportunity as well at Arsenal. It's going to be very interesting to see how they develop those structures, how they develop their tactics to get closer to Bon Pasteur's Chelsea, a side who haven't lost a game yet in any competition. They're the only blemish on their record being a draw to Leicester. And it's going to be very interesting to see this Sunday, Chelsea versus Arsenal. I'm sure we'll have a preview out for that later this week. And then it's in May, isn't it, the game between Chelsea and Manchester United, I believe. So, it's going to be interesting to see how close they can get. I think this season the title race is all but over now. There is 7 points between Chelsea and Arsenal, and Chelsea and Manchester United. Obviously, things can change very quickly. Suddenly, if Arsenal beat Chelsea this weekend, we're talking about it in a different light. But even then, Chelsea have a 4-point gap. And it looks very difficult to envision Chelsea losing at the moment.
Yeah, this Sunday for me will tell us all we need to know. If Chelsea go out and they beat Arsenal, and you say United win, suddenly Chelsea will be 8 points clear of Man United. They'll be 10 clear of Arsenal, and 9 clear of City. And at that point, I don't see no one's going to catch them, because it means Chelsea could lose 2 games and still win the league. And that would be surprising.
Even a draw, I think, is the same situation.
If Arsenal win, I think, yes, it's 4 points, but the big thing will be is that if United win as well, it means there's 2 teams that are right on their tail, which is bigger, which will be tougher for Chelsea, because obviously it means if they were to, they have to be careful, because there's 2 teams that could put them under pressure. But this Sunday's the big one between Chelsea and Arsenal. United can't really do much about. They can't do anything about it. They can't stop the result. But United,
Skinner runs on there,
tackles Ramirez as she throw on goal. But United have just got to keep doing what they're doing. If they win all their games by Chelsea, they'll end up finishing second in the league this season, and that would be a really, really strong campaign. Yeah,
it'd be the most Arsenal thing ever to somehow beat Chelsea, then lose to City.
Yeah,
and then suddenly that gap is 7 points again. But it's I've been thoroughly enjoying this season. It's going to be another good game this weekend between Chelsea and Arsenal, and then Champions League is on the horizon with coming up in March. We've got the draw for that next Friday, which should be an interesting one. But we are approaching the end of the season now. We're into the second half, and storylines are starting to come together. Tactics are starting to come together, and I think it's going to be interesting to see. We're setting up almost. It feels weird because the season's definitely not over yet, and it can change very quickly. But it definitely feels like looking at next season, if you've got Slagers at Arsenal with a year, or pretty much a year of management under her belt. She was running the team for the first 4 games. But since then, she has been in charge, so pretty much a year. You're going to have Mark Skinner, whose United side should have some investment this summer.
Yeah.
And look tasty. And then obviously you've got Chelsea's Bompas's Chelsea. Now, how their season goes this year will dictate a lot of how people view them going into next season. But it's setting up quite nicely. And then you're going to have City with a vengeance, potentially.
Yeah.
Again, it's very difficult to talk like that because there's a lot still to happen this season. But it is setting up quite nicely. That, though, does conclude our analysis of Manchester City 2, Manchester United 4. A very interesting game for a number of reasons. A very interesting tactical matchup. And yeah, very, very good game of football. Do leave your comments and thoughts in the comments below. I'm sure you guys have got a lot of opinions. It's always nice to hear from you. So get involved in the comments below. And of course, if you are new to the channel, make sure to hit subscribe. We're growing here, so do hit subscribe. Join us for weekly content, for weekly live watch-alongs. We're back live this Saturday with Manchester City versus Aston Villa, which is going to be a tasty one as well. City looking to get back to winning ways. That, though, is everything from us today. Thank you guys very, very much for watching, and we'll see you next time.
See ya.